Hey Diego, how are you?
Good, Shane. How are you?
Good, good, good. Man, this is a long week.
Yeah, it's been a long week, but it's very productive. I'm
Yes, yes.
really excited about everything that is happening,
Yeah,
and think things are going well.
yeah. How's the weather been up there?
It's been good. It's
Good,
been
good,
good.
yeah. And chilly
Yeah,
here. It's, I
yeah.
have relatives up north, and it's been warmer there than here. Keep saying, man, oh man, if I keeps getting like this, I might have to move north to get warm. This is crazy.
Well, that's funny. A friend of mine told me um, a few years ago.
Yeah.
We are in New Hampshire, right? And in Maine, there was in the news, one of the newspaper was publishing that there was a group of fishermen in a company that the weather was so cold outside that they had to go into the freezer to warm up.
Jeez, that's crazy. Wow. Yeah, that's nuts.
That is ridiculous, isn't it?
I was in Atlanta last night, and it was warmer there. I mean, it was warmer in New York than Atlanta. It's crazy.
Yep, yep.
Bonkers. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
the weather has been nice for us.
Yeah.
New Hampshire is known as a really cold state, but
Yeah.
this year has been a mild winter so far. And here we are. This is March, and I think it's been a good year for us. Not really crazy cold like in the previous years.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, Shane, today I want to talk about RVs and
Okay.
RV parks.
Yeah.
And this is the topic that I know nothing, but
Sure.
you are the subject matter expert.
Certainly love them.
So, yeah, so I would like the audience to get to know you better and get to know more about RVs and RV parks. So, why don't you give us some background
Sure.
on that? I know you have been traveling to different expo
Yeah.
fairs, and you know a lot about this topic.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, please give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah. So originally growing up in upstate New York, I camped like I was jokingly say like crazy as a kid growing up. Traveled up and down the East Coast a lot, mainly in the Northeast, a little bit in the Southeast. My parents owned started off with borrowing travel trailers, and then in around the year 2000 bought their own camper, and ever since then I've always just bought newer and nicer campers over the years. They've probably had five campers from when I was a kid to when I moved out. Um, and going to college and whatnot. We camped probably as a kid, we probably camped 30 nights a year. And like I said, anywhere from state parks to private campgrounds. And that's really what got me just sort of addicted to it, if you will, from a consumer and from a business standpoint. There's just, it's just in a booming industry for the last 50 years, but especially since the pandemic. So just I think really what's so interesting to me is just there's an RV for everyone. That just the aspect that if you're in a tent all the way up to a $5 million motorhome, there's anything for everyone really. And it's just the idea that there's so much customization, there's so many options for whether you're a family with a brand new baby or you're a retired couple, there's really an option for everyone. And that's really the amazing part of it. And it shows with my own family. We camp since I've been camping since before I could walk. And we every year we go to the same place in the Adirondacks for the last, I think, 35 years now. And it's in the Adirondacks or New York, I should add. But it's just a beautiful place. And it's kind of that family tradition that started back in 1989, I guess it would be. And it's just that routine and it's the tradition and the memories. And I have a home video and I sit there and crisscross on the floor and I could watch it right now and almost cry because there's so many memories attached to it and whatnot. And aside from that, I've gone out west with my brother and I went on a 40-day RV trip, just looking out, to really see America, that last little hurrah before the real world, if you will. And that was just life changing, not only for the memories, also the challenges of an older RV and some of the breakdowns that come with that, trying to rip each other's hair out at times, but it's really the adventure along the way. It's, we always say it's the trip, not the destination, and it certainly holds true with RVing to a massive extent. Um, the biggest thing from the business perspective, having a goal of building RV parks, there's definitely having that consumer background is definitely huge to know what consumers want when it comes to site sizes, when it comes to amenities, when it comes to proximity to interstates versus destinations, and just other basic stats about the industry is really helpful. For me, I've gone to a lot of RV shows just to see newer developments and innovations in the RVs, whether that's things like they're a little behind compared to cars when it comes to, say, some of the driverless features and things like that. But there's definitely a lot of innovation when it comes to other areas, whether it's the braking technologies, some of the chassis and a little more technicalities, and some other areas, whether it's the fashion, if you will, or the decor of it and the inside. The other aspect being the operational side of campgrounds, I've gone to what's called OHCE. Now it's called OHI. It's the Outdoor Hospitality Industry. It's basically an RV conference. The first year I went was in Orlando. Last year was in Kansas City. This coming year it will be in Oklahoma City. So that was definitely beneficial just to see all the vendors that are there, from anything from reservation software to electric pedestals to anything you can imagine really RV park related. A lot of reservation system info, a lot of classes. So it's very similar to other industries, whether that's real estate, whether that's wholesaling. A lot of those industries have conferences, and this is very similar, but for RV parks very specifically. So it's definitely educational in that aspect to learn about that. And the second year went a lot of networking from following up from the prior year, seeing some of the changes and whatnot. And it's definitely been challenging for the industry as far as from the prior year, it's slowed down a little bit, but it's still booming. I mean, it's slowed from the absolute peak and the absolute best of the best that it's ever been, if you will, but it's still on fire compared to, say, 5 years ago, even. So it's definitely interesting to see those changes and to see kind of where the industry's headed. I think innovation wise and going forward in the future, there's definitely some challenges or sort of, some things that are going on, but it'll be interesting to see what happens there definitely going forward. So,
And I will add that you also have a degree on hospitality.
yes.
So I see you as a manager of a hotel,
Mhm.
but it's a flat hotel and everybody brings their own room. Everybody
Exactly.
drives in the RV.
Yep.
So you are the manager of this park and you have that
Mhm.
mindset of being a consumer, being the manager, being the business owner.
Uh-huh.
So you kind of have all the mindset to understand where people are coming from and how you can provide the best service, right?
I always say the best part about campgrounds is it's kind of like self-checkout at a store. The guests are their own housekeeper, to clean their bed. I would say
Right.
that's one of the best parts about it.
That's what I like about it. As an investor, I don't have to maintain dirt.
Yep, exactly. Yep,
All
absolutely.
right, so I have a couple of questions,
Sure.
Shane, that I want to ask you, and we want to share this with our
Sure.
audience. Can you share how the campground and RV industries have evolved over the past decade,
Yeah.
and what key factors have driven these changes?
Mhm. Yeah, I think definitely ownership has changed a lot. The sort of mom and pop is still the vast majority are still mom and pop owned. I don't know what the statistic is, but it's probably at least 60%. Um, Prior to COVID, it was probably 80 or 90%. There are some like institutional groups that have gotten more involved, similar like the hotel industry was mom and pop 90%, say 40 years ago, and now it's probably 60% now mom and pop and franchised and whatnot. So it's similar to that regards. They're trying to get a little more tech savvy as far as pricing when it comes to what they call like dynamic pricing, which is primarily charging different rates day to day rather than just saying, hey, our rate for July is $35 a night, charging $20 tonight, charging $25 tomorrow night, depending on demand and the seasonality of it. So that they've gotten a little bit smarter with that. The one thing that I'm a little bit against, but it's slowly happening, is going on to OTAs, which is online travel agents. And that's basically listing the property on a website like Expedia, basically. And they develop those sites for campgrounds. The only reason I'm a little bit against that is just because that relationship between hotels and those websites is a little bit of a disaster. And the only reason it came about was 9/11, believe it or not. And they needed room revenue after 9/11. And that's when those websites and the .com bust and all that kind of happened at the same time. And the campground owners don't really know that there's a horrible relationship between hotels and OTAs. So I'm a little bit fearful that all these campgrounds are going to sign up for these websites and then get stuck with them, kind of like the hotels are. So it's great for more business, but the campgrounds don't really need it necessarily, at least not right now. Maybe in a next big recession or something like that. But it's kind of an odd development, if you will.
I will say that can be a good marketing tool. You know, if you have so many vacancies, that's a way for you to get consumers coming in. But once you build your uh, clientele, they always come back. Like when you were telling me your story as a kid growing up, you always went to the same place,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
So it just takes a little bit of time for you to build that relationship with your customers, and
Yep.
they're always coming back.
Exactly. Even more so than hotels and stuff. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Another question is, in your experience, what are the biggest challenges facing the campground and RV industries today, and how are businesses within these sectors innovating to address them?
Yeah, I think depends on the market, really. I mean, some markets have an oversupply issue, but it really totally depends on the market. Some markets are, they're building campgrounds like crazy, and it really hasn't been an issue yet, but it will be soon when there's just too many campgrounds. I think once the next, if and when a recession hits again, that could be a major issue when or gas prices go up because some of their price sensitivity. So it certainly will happen again when there's a major um, price effect, if you will, in that regards. Aside from that, it really depends on the camper. It's usually campground by campground. Another major issue I see a lot of is tenant issues. So a lot of campgrounds rely on long-term guests rather than overnight guests, if you will, like single night stays. And within those campgrounds, they often will have issues with like squatting or issues where someone will say they're going to stay for a week and they just don't leave and they don't pay. And there's a lot of local municipalities are not educated on how campgrounds work, that there's certain laws that campgrounds aren't a permanent resident, but the sheriff or the local police or whoever it is doesn't know the law on that. And they'll just say, oh, that's a resident. You have to take them to court when they might not have to, depending upon the municipality and the state and whatnot. So that's definitely a challenge. Aside from that, just technology is probably the biggest thing with changing technology, whether it's AI, whether it's marketing, whether it's, just keeping up with some people that aren't tech savvy. They're really going to struggle, I think, in the next few years when it comes to some of the major changes in marketing, major changes in social media, AI, and things like that. So,
That's interesting.
yeah,
So I know you are in Florida, and Florida has been enforcing like the dry parking, something like that, right?
dry parking, you said?
Yeah, like it's not considered a residence, and it's illegal to
Oh,
have
right.
a.
Yep. Yeah, they're pretty strict. Most states in the whole country, especially Florida, Florida are strict about overnight parking, meaning you can't, if you own 1,000 acres, like in the county I live in, you can't park an RV on it. Doesn't matter I mean, are they going to find out? Probably not. But in most cases, you can't park an RV and live in it or even stay in it unless you're in an RV park or a mobile home park. And that's most of the Southeast and most of the country. There's a couple really rural counties that allow it, but it's quite rare, which is good for the RV park industry because it drives guests into your park. It's a little bit of a negative when it comes to home ownership and individual rights and whatnot. So it's a little bit of a debate at times. But yeah, it's certainly interesting how those laws kind of play out. And it affects zoning laws are a challenge too. That's a major challenge for building RV parks and whatnot, depending on where you are, but especially in the Southeast.
So for the people who have been reading our book and asking us questions, that's why we have been telling them that we are more interested in RVs that are already, or RV parks that are already existing and established.
Yep.
Because what you just said, having a piece of land and try to develop this into an RV park, it's very difficult. It's not
Oh,
impossible, depending on the state and the counties, but it's a lot easier if we find an RV park that is already existing. So
absolutely.
that's a good answer for some of the questions that we have been receiving this week.
Absolutely.
Another question is, with the rise of digital nomadism and remote work, how are the campground and RV industries catering to this new demographic of travelers seeking both connectivity and the freedom of the open road?
Yeah, I don't think they've done a great job on this. Depends on where you go. There's certain campgrounds have wonderful Wi-Fi setups, and at that conference I was at, there's probably 6 different Wi-Fi companies there, and they all do a pretty good job of setting up Wi-Fi solutions and whatnot. If you go to state parks, that usually Wi-Fi is non-existent, or you stand at the entrance and hope you get a signal, or you go across town and find the library, that kind of thing. But most campgrounds have some form of Wi-Fi, but usually it's not that great. Some, don't get me wrong, there's some RV parks that are wonderful with it, but the majority aren't. So it's definitely an area with more and more millennials traveling, with more and more whatever the next generation, Gen Z, whatever it is, Alpha, I think the one after that. But with more and more generations traveling, it's definitely going to become more and more crucial, I think, for connectivity, for internet, for not cable. A lot of people don't, it's become obsolete to put in cable at your sites. It's really a waste of money at this point. But for actual Wi-Fi, it's pretty much like putting in electricity at this point in most places. Unless you're a truly a destination that's meant to be disconnected, like there's some niche markets here and there, but even then that's becoming less and less likely. It's almost like electricity at this point.
And that's the reason why our preference is to get RV parks close to an inner state road, right? So we can drive to a Starbucks coffee shop or some place that we can find Wi-Fi in case the RV doesn't have a good
Yep.
signal rate.
And it's similar to like sewer requirements in the sense that it's so much more beneficial to have city sewer than it is a septic system, just due to all the
Mhm.
costs involved with installing it and maintenance and EPA laws, and it can be the difference between a profitable park and an unprofitable park in certain instances. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay, another question I have is looking to the future, what emerging trends do you believe will have the most significant impact on the campground and RV industries? And how can business prepare to meet these changes?
Yeah, I think from a marketing and standpoint, I think AI is going to be huge, just like every business. From a customer interaction standpoint, from a website, I think AI will be everything pretty much when it comes to marketing. From an on-site perspective, I think it's really sticking to the basics. I think campgrounds will almost be an escape from technology still when it comes to customer interaction, when it comes to basic amenities, the kids playing outside, things like that. So I don't think that'll really change much, but really I think the biggest changes and biggest innovations will really be in marketing and reservation systems and yield management, which is just maintaining rates and dynamic pricing. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is really going to be how you find your customers. It's going to be the biggest challenge, biggest change, I should say, and challenge in a competitive sense. Aside from that, I think it's really going to be how you communicate with your guests, which comes down to marketing again. Aside from, I think people are going to crave campgrounds more for a face-to-face experience once we become even more technologically engaged, if you will, if that even does happen. But it's hard to believe we could. But I definitely think that human touch on site will be the most important, and then the technological sense off-site and making the reservations. Those two things will really be the most important.
All right, very good.
Yeah.
Um, those are really good questions that most people have been asking us.
Right.
And thank you, Shane, for sharing your knowledge and experience. Thank you for our audience for the questions. That are really good questions. A lot of people are getting engaged,
Yeah.
and the book has been revised, and we keep making it better. So thank you for those comments that make some of the people gave us ways to make it better, and we appreciate that. This is a community that we are building each other up and helping each other out, and we're just getting started, and we don't know yet where we're gonna end. But something I know is I'm becoming interested in being an RVer
Yeah. Yeah.
and be able to travel all the way from New Hampshire down to Florida
Right.
and visit some of these RV parks that we're going to be establishing or acquiring for our team.
Sure.
And this is going to be very interesting. The next 5 to 10 years,
Mhm.
I can only see a lot of fun because, like you say, you go to a place that you can be fishing, you can be at a lake or close to the beaches, and then you can work right there. So
Right.
it's like a play and have fun and then do something for you make a living, and you don't have to be tied to an office, you don't have to be tied to a building.
Exactly.
It's your RV is your home,
Accurate.
but it's your home-based business, right? And
Absolutely.
but it's on wheels.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think you can go wrong there.
Heck no. Yeah. Yeah. It's wonderful. And the only other advice I always give to people is don't buy a new RV, buy used. If you buy an RV. The only other advice
Yes.
I always get, because man, some of the newer ones they have some crazy quality issues. It's a little weird, but that sounds wacky. You know,
And very, very expensive too,
oh
right?
yeah, and people always say like, why would you buy a used car? Like buy a new car, and with RVs, it's kind of the opposite. It's a little weird, just because
Uh-huh.
previous owner kind of works out all the kinks and stuff. It's kind of weird, but yeah.
Right, right.
So
Okay, Shane. So thank you so much again. This is a really good call. You always bring some good stuff, and the audience appreciates it. So thank you so much.
that's cool. All right, nice talking to you.
You too. Bye bye.